Meeting of the Spokane authors.
Here is frightful, and since we've no place to go, let's get it on.
First of all, my name's Sue Eller, if anybody doesn't know me. And I had written this not very long ago. It was from a writing prompt. I think I found it in Writer's Digest. But it was called The Revenge of the Literary Legends. And so they wanted you to write a parody or pastiche, whatever that is. Somebody knows, but I don't. In the voice of one of your favorite deceased authors, observing a facet of modern life that drives you absolutely mad. Okay? So I've seen and participated in writing prompts before, and in some cases it's a one-word prompt. In others, a phrase or a sentence that connects with the strange circuitry of my brain. Occasionally, I feel a spark in an imaginative neuron, and I come up with a short story. This prompt was irresistible to me. See if you can guess which of my favorite deceased authors is depicted in this exercise. Bonus question, which famous poet speaks from beyond the grave with a single word? Okay, that's the bonus question. All right. Here we go. I call this a social dilemma in verse. To like or not to like, that is the Facebook question. Whether it is nobler online to face the fury of the frowning emoji or to suffer the snide retorts of a smarmy swarm, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. To comment and risk the onslaught of verbal rants, or to simply be ignored, unfriended, or worse, blocked. To be blocked. Aye, there's the rub. To sink into social media oblivion, or to continue in the way of slow torture until my brain leak out into cyberspace. Out, out, you damn cell phone. Be gone, you foul technology. I shall be your mindless slave nevermore. And you can quote me on that. Okay, who can guess who my favorite deceased author was? One of my favorites.
I can do
Sarah?
it. Shakespeare.
Yes. Soliloquy from Hamlet. And who picked up on the word?
Nevermore.
Very good. Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, that's all. Yay.
Next. Okay, the next person on the list is Scribble.
Scribble.
Or Scratched. Either way, the name has been scratched out or scribbled out. So.
Yeah, that is because the person is senile and she wrote her name on the wrong list.
Congratulations.
Okay, so now that that's out of the way, would Amy Logan like to come up and read, please?
Is there any of this for us? Of course, sure. Oh, you did? You guys meet him? No, I'm the senile one? No,
Okay, this is the ugly sweater prompt called Fish Out of Water. David parked on the street, Unit 703, 8 p.m. Deidre had agreed to give his story a read after the party. He wore a bright red Christmas sweater with a large rainbow trout wearing a Santa hat. If that wasn't ugly, he didn't know what was. He took the elevator to the 7th floor and heard a party in progress as soon as the elevator doors opened. Down the hall was a partially open door. He entered only to see no other Christmas sweaters, not one, ugly or otherwise. Also, he didn't recognize anyone. Then he saw Todd, his nemesis, from the writing program. Todd approached David, shaking his head at the trout with the Santa hat. "That's some sweater," he remarked. "You're not fooling anyone by showing up here, and you're too late. The kid's on Christmas break." He won't do any reviews, not at any price. And believe me, I've tried. What kid? Oh, give it up, you know, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The prodigy, the wunderkind, over in the corner on the stool with the red tie. 12 years old. He can read a short story and in 5 minutes give you a full critique and predict if it'll sell. If it's any good, he has a perfect record. And if I can be honest with the work you've been putting out lately, this really is a waste of your time. Have you seen Deidre? Asked David, remembering why he came. Deidre? Nope. And while I've been here a while, I'm off for another drink. Have fun. Todd disappeared into the crowded room. Wunderkind, a review, perfect record. David went to the bar and ordered a sparkling mineral water. He took the drink, casually moving from the bar to stand near the boy on the stool. Hey, he said to the boy, nodding his head. Hey, answered the boy, slowly spinning on the stool. Nice sweater. David suspected this was sarcasm. Enjoying the party, he asked. It's okay. I'm just here meeting up with my mom. Christmas. I'm Silas. Hi, I'm David. Silas, unusual name. Silas Marner, T.S. Eliot. My dad got me all the illustrated children's classics. They have an illustrated Silas Marner edition for kids. You have to know the right people. Why are you over here? How come you're not out there? Silas asked, tipping his head toward the center of the crowded room. David hesitated. He felt himself turning red. Let me guess, offered Silas. You're a writer, and you've got the next best thing with you right there, folded in your pocket. You've heard the rumors about a kid who can turn the Three Little Pigs into a bestseller. Am I right? David hesitated. Actually, I just heard about you tonight. I'm here to meet a friend. She promised to give it a good read, but she hasn't shown, and this is the best thing I've ever written. Hand that over, replied Silas, extending his hand toward David, while still rotating on the stool. Really? You'll read it? I believe you. Your sweater, if there's a fish out of water here, it's you. But only if it's not too long. My mom's coming. David handed the story to Silas. Got a pen? Asked the boy. David handed him a pen. Laying the paper on the table, Silas began to make numerous edits. He worked silently, underlining and making notes in the margins. Then he folded the story back in half. How do you do it anyway? Silas asked David. I've got an uncle who writes. He gets up every morning to sit in his chair at his computer, way before the rest of us are awake. He sits there alone in the cold and the dark, wrestling with words when he could stay in bed. Every morning he gets up and struggles with language, typing it, correcting it, sending it off somewhere, to be read by someone who doesn't know anything, on the hope that maybe they'll smile or gasp or cry and hand it off to someone who maybe does know something, or at least has the power to print it. That's a lot of work. How do you do it? And why do you even try? David swallowed hard. Todd was right. His story was terrible. He must be wrong about the writing, wrong about wasting his time working so hard. He hesitated. I've always done it. After so long, it's what I do. That's all. Is that enough? I guess that's enough, replied Silas. It's just an awful lot of work. Here, he said, handing the paper back to David. You've got some material to take out. If it doesn't set the scene, enhance characters, or foreshadow the plot, I don't want to read it. And the character name, Stefan, European, thought we were in South Dakota. Stop trying to be creative. It's so distracting. Plot line's good. Characters are strong. I caught most of your Easter eggs. You may have a pushcart winner there. It's a very good piece, way better than most I've read. Pushcart winner, really? Yep, answered Silas. David's phone chimed from his pocket. It was Deidre. David, where are you? I'm here, 703. I'm at 703, and you're not here. What apartment is this? David asked Silas. 716. Wrong party. Be there soon, David told Deidre, turning back to Silas. Hey, you really helped me out. I don't know what to say. Don't mention it. I gotta go. See ya. Silas hopped off the stool and left David standing near the bar. He held the story tightly in his hand as he passed Todd on the way out. He read your work? Demanded Todd incredulously. He did. What the hell did you say to him? Good night, Todd, said David. And Merry Christmas, he added, raising the store high in the air as he headed down the hall to find Deidre.
All right.
All right, thank you. Dave.
So I didn't come up with anything from the ugly sweater bit either. What I did is I went back into my Stone Island Sea stories. We do have one scene in there from Christmas. So I thought I would share Christmas on Stone Island with you. probably gonna stop partway through because I did a timed read on it the other day. And that was about as far as I got for the 5 minutes. This was the third Christmas celebrated during Island Expedition's voyage, and the second since their arrival on the island. For Pierce, it was his first one here, having spent the previous year's feast aimlessly detained in Brunswick, New Guernsey. While he understood perfectly well the effects of being in the southern hemisphere, it felt strange to mark the occasion of the Lord's birth on a warm and sunny summer's day. He held long-cherished childhood memories of dampness and cold, perhaps even a fall of snow and the warmth of family, a roaring fire, and a sumptuous meal inside. That Tuesday was given over entirely to the festivities of the season. Religious celebrations occupied much of the morning, conducted by the same Vespercan Reformed Episcopalian who had led the memorial services for those lost against Hawk. Pierce attended not so much out of any spiritual obligation, but out of a sense of social requirement. Yet it was good to once again hear the familiar stories of travelers, a lack of lodging, and a birth in the stable. How remarkable, he thought, that even here the story was so remarkably the same. He noted that a few names, primarily of locations, differed, but in all, it was the same story he had heard every year of his early life. In the afternoon, nearly all of the island's residents gathered in a large meadow located south of the partially restored village. It was relatively flat, and the grass had been cropped by the sheep that had recently grazed upon it. A game of keggers was organized, reminding Pierce somewhat of rounders, that working-class version of cricket. Keggers was the Vespercan version of whatever similar contest was played in Kentlands. He was not unfamiliar with the game, having witnessed a few matches while in Brunswick. Play involved a tightly wound, leather-covered ball, roughly the size of a 4-pound shot. Remembering the few times he had tried to catch one, Pierce thought that it was almost as hard as the comparable cannonball. Play also involved clubs used to strike the ball and put it in motion, and players running to specified locations. The most common means of designating these points was the use of empty kegs, hence the name. Rather than the 4 points or bases of rounders, the game used 5, arranged in a pentagonal form. Participation in the game was fluid and constantly changing. It had started out as a British versus Vespercan, but as it progressed through the prerequisites 11 settings, that exact method of defining the teams slipped away. Nor did the players strenuously confine themselves to the traditional 13 to a side, and in the back of the 6th setting, no fewer than 21 defenders intimidated those presuming to strike. Had those 21 not obtained the needed 5 kills, every one of the 22 on the other side would have had taken his turn as striker. But once many players had a chance to strike, their interest waned and they were in search of something to eat or drink. Others, eager to join in the play, took their place. Pierce watched the front of the 7th setting with some interest. Several crewmen from Island Expedition, hands who had experienced the game in New Guernsey, now played on both sides. He noted that most of the British seamen acquitted themselves very well in spite of their relative unfamiliarity with the sport. As the 8th setting was about to get underway, a handbell rang. That was the signal for the Christmas feast proper. Players rapidly abandoned the game in the field. Still, there were those few nearing their turn as striker who pleaded in vain to let the game continue a while longer. While this game of keggers had continued throughout the afternoon, Mrs. Packingham and the other ladies of the colony had labored in a makeshift outdoor kitchen to prepare a feast for all. Now the rough tables set beneath the trees at the southern end of the meadow groaned with the weight of the meal. Even before the bell stopped ringing, people lined up, jostled for position, and scrambled to obtain dishes and utensils. There were so many people eager to eat in a rustic and rural setting, it would have been impossible to establish any priority based on rank. It would have also proven impossible to have detailed anyone to serve anyone else. A queue of sorts was established, and folks moved past the tables, serving themselves from the heaping bowls, platters, and trays. Although a naval officer and one trained in a more genteel method of dining, Pierce did not object. Over the years, he had come to rather enjoy these occasions, where the emphasis was on eating and not the protocol surrounding it. He obtained a plate and flatware, falling in behind two laughing crewmen. They saw him and became somewhat more somber. "Why now, Captain, you should be first, sir." "Aye, sir. Take our place, sir. Not right we eat first, sir." "That's quite all right, Jones." "Williams, aboard, aren't the hands piped to dinner ahead of the officers?" asked Pierce. "There's plenty for all and time for all, and I will maintain my present position in line." And that was about where I ran into 5 minutes.
At a last minute entry. Okay. That's Carol Briscoe?
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't sure if it was Carol or Daryl.
Oh, did I?
Learn to write.
Okay, a couple of you heard this story before, and it's in our new anthology. So, it's called The Camel Trainer. Some years ago, while participating in a huge Christmas pageant, I had a memorable encounter with an extremely perceptive, caring individual who left an indelible impression on me. We performed on the grounds of the majestic Los Angeles Elias Temple. Years before, the acreage had once been the home of Harold Lloyd, a silent film star and comedian. Today, a reflection pool, a myriad of flowers, palm trees, and tall greenery surrounded the edifice that overlooks the wide, spacious lawn and community below. Portraying one of the townspeople for 4 nights helped ease the turmoil my family felt at the time. Surrounded by friends and fellow performers on these tranquil grounds led a brief interval of peace. Our stage was set against the west side of the temple, with curved rows of chairs on the open lawn for our audience. 3 stories up was a long, wide ledge, where 3 actors appeared nightly as angels during the manger scene. Strong breezes made their white robes billow effectively as spotlight shone on them. It was quite impressive. The rest of us watching from below held our breaths for their safety during rehearsals. Yes, they were properly secured. Live animals also played a major role. Riders dressed as Roman soldiers were in command of 4 sleek black horses, waiting to appear from the rear staging area. A tiny baby lamb was in the care of a trainer in shepherd's garb. My mom, husband, and teenage sons came to the first performance. Before the show, folks mingled and were allowed to pet the baby lamb. When my husband felt the sprouting miniature horns hidden beneath the soft wool on its tiny head, he exclaimed, "Oh, it's going to be a boy!" My mother grinned and remarked, "When you mean going to be, it already is." People close by just smiled. Before each show, most performers waited off stage behind foliage on the north side, near the visitor center. During our first evening rehearsal, I chose to wait for my entrance on the south front side, next to a high hedge, thinking I'd be peacefully alone and unseen there. To my total surprise, someone else also had the same idea. How startled I was to encounter an enormous live camel seated by the hedge, accompanied by a calm, quiet Native American trainer. They sat silently, hidden from public view. On seeing me, the animal made a slight snuffling noise and raised her head, curiously peering sideways at me with her big brown eyes. Even sitting down, she was very tall and extremely robust. I stammered, "Oh, hello." The trainer, Frank, smiled and acknowledged me with a gentle nod. He spoke in a low voice, ever so soothingly, first to the camel to calm her, then to me, saying, "It's all right. Just move slowly so you won't startle her." Gathering my long costume around me, I sat down carefully near this massive animal, knowing camels could spit, and asked if I might pet her. Frank assured me it was okay. As we began conversing in small whispers, I felt a strong, quieting presence from this kind man. His persona provided a much-needed calming experience for me. He spoke gently with me in a compassionate, kind-hearted way. As I lightly stroked the camel's soft, thick, layered, spongy hair, she moved ever so slightly and accepted me being there. Leaning against her large, warm, substantial body was soothing. Breezy California nights can be cool, and she warmed me. Animals often provide comfort, companionship, and warmth in our lives, and this scenario proved to be a very amiable, supportive one. Frank told me he was the owner of all the animals who were making their nightly appearance. Others were in the care of different costumed handlers. Only he alone was the personal keeper of this camel, who had a strong personality. I had several questions about the camel, and he shared her past history. She was 10 years old and formerly an untamed, tempestuous, feisty, strong-willed leader of a wild, free-running pack. She'd gone through 8 frustrated trainers in 2 years before he willingly took her on. Frank was a successful and unusual master. He told me her previous trainers had shouted and used whips, and then wondered why the camel was untrainable. He said he never raised his voice, spoke harshly, or used a whip on any animal he worked with. He proved it wasn't necessary if you remained calm, kind, firm, and patient. We agreed those principles applied to children, too, or anyone else in one's life for that matter. For the next few evenings, I continued sitting quietly behind the tall hedge with Frank and his camel, waiting for our respective cues. We spoke softly and sometimes didn't converse at all, for we had developed a quiet, internal connection that didn't require words. This man and an inner peace that permeated the space around us. Just before each nightly cue for the camel's entrance, Frank slowly stood, patted her lightly, and gave a gentle, firm command to rise. What a magnificent creature she was, as she lifted herself on those 4 incredibly tall, strong legs to her full height. He slowly walked her with ease out to her position on the lawn. I followed after, taking my designated place, feeling enriched and grateful to have met there each night with him. After the final evening's performance, our cast was helping pack props and other artifacts. The soldiers took the horse away, and Frank then led his camel across the lawn about 20 feet from our raised stage. When I looked up, he gave me a kind smile, a salute goodbye, and a significant nod as he passed on out to the waiting trailers. I smiled and nodded back with a warm farewell wave. Silent communication has varying levels and is often the most powerful. I never forgot that fleeting moment and the quiet connection we 3 beings shared for a few peaceful December evenings.
Sorry, somebody scratched.
You're not blind.
Oh, I'm just sniffing.
I know, that's what.
Scratch and sniff. Esther. It's your turn.
Okay. For the last 2 years, I was sick on this stage to read a story. And I wanted to read the same story as a Christmas story that I wrote in Winter Stories. And also I wrote an ugly story thing too, but it's a real story thing. I thought we had to write both, so I did. Okay. This is kind of close. Christmas bugs. In December one wintry day, into a magical forest far, far away wandered a little boy who was lost and couldn't find his way. Soon he came to a small clearing. Here musical notes flooded his hearing. On the forest floor he saw many red, green, blue, and yellow bugs moving about, all having a good time, no doubt. On a flat rock sat a red bug, a green bug, and a blue bug, playing their tiny harmonicas. As they played their lively tunes, their fellow bugs danced or tapped their feet, which the little boy thought was pretty darn neat. As he looked on, he was totally amazed, for he had never seen bugs this colorful or acting this way. It was truly a magical scene. When all the music, dancing, and tapping stopped, the bugs all turned and looked at the boy. "Who are you, lad? And why are you here in our magical forest?" asked a yellow bug, standing on his oak leaf rug. "My name is Tad, and I'm sorry to intrude in your magical forest," the boy began, "but I'm lost and don't know where I am." Then he began to sob. "I miss my mom, and I miss my dad. I just want to go home again." "Do you need a hug?" asked a caring red bug. "We're sorry you're lost." Little Tad wiped his tears, and slowly shook his head. "You can talk, and you're colorful, and I can see that you can do many things. What kind of bugs are you anyway?" he asked. A green bug stepped forward and said, "Well, my lad, we are Christmas bugs." "Christmas bugs?" said Tad, surprised. "Yes, only in this magical forest we are found. That's why we can speak and do many things, and are of many colors instead of black or brown." "Oh," said the boy, "can you help me find my way home?" "Not right now, I'm afraid, for it's growing dark," replied a bug so blue. "And we bugs don't leave the forest at night. We'll leave in the early morning when the sun is bright." The little boy shivered and pulled his coat tight. "I'm cold," he complained. "Where am I to sleep tonight?" Several bugs smiled and pointed to an umbrella-shaped tree. "Under the magical tree," they said. "There you'll be warm and cozy. You'll see." Tad looked over at the magical tree and saw that its branches were full of Christmas bugs. They hummed a tune oh so mellow and glowed colors of red, green, blue, and yellow. Then he crawled under the tree and lay down, where he was warm and fell asleep. The bugs watched over him as he slept sound, dreaming of home and of being found. Early the next morning, the bugs woke him up. "It's time to go," they said, "but first you must eat until you are full." Then they pointed to a small tree a short distance away. Walking over to it, Tad was delighted to see many tiny candy canes hanging from the branches of this tree. He was hungry and happily ate until he was full. Now he thought of home and was ready to go. His guides were a red bug, a green bug, a bug so blue, and a yellow bug, somewhat fat. Two on each shoulder they sat. Many goodbyes were heard as they led him out of the clearing, and music from the 3 harmonica players once again filled his hearing. The 4 bugs guided him, each whispering in his ear, telling him where to go, which way to turn, here and here, until they were out of the forest and into an open field. And Tad saw that he was no longer lost and started running, for there was his home across the field. "Thanks for all your care in helping me find my way," he cried. "You're welcome," the Christmas bugs replied, and then they were gone, disappearing into thin air. Tad ran on and soon spotted his dad and mom, shouting for joy and running to him. Amid all their hugs, he told them about the magical forest and Christmas bugs, but sadly they thought he was just very tired and confused. Snowflakes began to fall and they went inside. Here they stood in front of their Christmas tree, so beautiful and tall. And Tad was so happy that he dropped to his knees to see all his presents beneath their tree. On Christmas Day, he emptied out his Christmas stocking. There among his many gifts were several tiny candy canes and a tiny harmonica. Thinking of the Christmas bugs, he picked it up and pressed a tiny button on one of its sides, and it began to play. As he listened, a smile crept across his face, for he recognized the tunes from his adventure in the magical forest far, far away. Okay. The second one I was going to read, I thought of this on the way home from the meeting last time. I thought, I'm not going to be able to write anything on that. It's about an ugly sweater. And by the way, I like most ugly sweaters, but anyway. I put on my cool, ugly sweater, the one with the funny-faced deer and roly-poly bear. Where are we going? Asked the funny-faced deer. To an ugly sweater party, I replied. Oh, fun, replied the roly-poly bear. So off we went, walking down our street until we came to the house, or so I thought, where the party was. I knocked on the door and it slowly creaked open. Stepping inside, I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" There was no answer. I thought, where's the party? It's creepy here, said the funny-faced deer. I'm scared. Me too, said the roly-poly bear. Let's get out of here. A shiver ran up and down my spine. Yes, let's go, I said in a hurried voice. This is obviously the wrong house. But as I turned to leave, a glass dome-like thing dropped over us. Hey, let us out of here, we screamed. And then something slid under my boots and clicked, sealing us in. Let us out, we screamed again, but it was of no use. Suddenly, a giant hand wearing a black mitten picked us up and shook us until white flakes floated all around us. Oh no, I cried, we're in a snow globe. Then the giant hand set us down on one of many long shelves. Looking about, we saw hundreds of other snow globes, all with other humans wearing their ugly sweaters. Some were waving at us. We never made it to the ugly sweater party after all, and here we are to this very day, still sitting on this long, long shelf.
Sounds to me like they actually did make the party. Oh, Larry. It's your turn.
Everybody gets a turn. I did get the information about the ugly sweater. It's called the Christmas Party. Bill reread the invitation. It stated attendees should wear their worst or ugliest Christmas sweater. He had just the right one with the cross-eyed, bloody-nosed reindeer. The animal appeared to have misjudged the landing on the roof and slammed into the chimney, busted his nose. His rear was seated on a toboggan he had been pulling. Presents were scattered across the roof. Bill had dropped the invitation on a table only to find the coffee he spilled earlier got sucked up by the paper. The address was a little blurred, but thought he could read it well enough to find the location. He looked at the numbers on the houses and could hear the sound, what sounded like partying going, so guessed he had the right one. But when he rang the doorbell, some big dude with large white floppy ears opened the door. He said, "You're late, and what's with the bloody deer on your chest? Ain't this the ugly sweater party?" "No, but come on in and we might all drink to the occasion." "What occasion is that?" "Bunny is going away, and we're all here to see her off. There's booze in the blender, beer in the cooler, and she might be happy to see something besides bunny ears. Bill said, I know a gal named Bunny. The big guy dragged him in and said, hey, looky here, what I found outside your door. Bunny turned around and said, Bill, how did you know about the party? Bunny Bumpkins. I just happened to be driving by and heard the music. You didn't say anything about going away. Oh, they kicked me out of here, so I found a place across the street for less money. After we all get drunk, we're going to trash this place and haul my stuff over there. Good for you. Give me a beer and I'll join you.
Yeah, if you're Mary, I can't read the last name.
Keyboard.
Okay.
I find it quite interesting that all the ugly sweater stories went to the wrong address.
That was the whole prompt.
That was part of the prompt.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Was it? Oh, I didn't get that, and I'm like, how come they all came up with that same? Okay, I'm going to read a passage from my book. My book is a daily inspirational, so there's a passage for every day of the year. So I'm going to read the one that's my favorite Christmas memory. There were 6 children in my family, 4 boys and 2 girls. At the time of this particular Christmas, we all lived in a teeny tiny house. It was shortly before we moved down the street to the big house, but square footage has nothing to do with this memory. I think most children aren't much aware of such things. It's the feelings and the experience of the moment that are important to kids. It was the night before Christmas, and the tradition in our family, for as long as I can remember, was that we could open one present on Christmas Eve. My mother chose the gift we would open. Fuzzy new flannel pajamas that she had made for each one of us out of different colors and prints of fabric. We all donned our PJs, the older siblings helping the younger ones. How my mother had the time, space, or sanity to sew 6 pair of pajamas at Christmas time didn't occur to me then, but it amazes me now. But I digress. That wasn't the favorite memory. When we woke up on Christmas morning and ran out to the tree, there were 6 new flannel stockings laid in a semicircle under the tree. We each knew immediately which one was ours because it matched the fabric of our jammies. It was so exciting and unexpected. I can still see those stockings trimmed in colorful piping to match the material. I don't remember exactly what was in those stockings. Oranges, whole walnuts, and that striped hard candy that looked like a ribbon probably. But I remember the stockings like it was yesterday. I think love is the only thing that truly endures. The love that was put into making all those pajamas and stockings was a true gift that Christmas. My mom moved on from this world long ago. I think she would be very surprised to know that I still remember her efforts from that very special long ago Christmas. And after I have a passage in my book, I ask a question. And the question is, what gift of the heart can you give this holiday that will be long remembered as a gift of love?
Okay, looks like I'm next. I will be reading for Elena Smith. She couldn't be here, and so she emailed me her story. Roy's Merry Christmas Nightmare. Roy had been looking forward to this night all week. The ugly sweater party, it wasn't every day that he got invited to one, especially by his work buddy, Tom. Roy, an IT specialist at Perfect Meals, a premium cat and dog food company in Seattle, was typically reserved and kept to himself, except for chatting about server issues and the latest network firewall security. But tonight, he was hopeful. A party, people, Christmas lights, maybe even a lovely lady he could finally connect with. It was the holiday miracle he'd been waiting for. Roy had done his part to prepare. He'd ordered what had to be the ugliest of sweaters in existence. Neon green with a large, poorly stitched cat wearing a Santa hat tangled in Christmas lights, surrounded by metallic embroidered bones. It had arrived in a rumpled plastic bag from Amazon with a faint smell of mothballs and mystery. And he couldn't have been happier. He was sure no one could outdo this hideous masterpiece. The night of the party, Roy input the address Tom had given him into his phone. The directions took him out of his usual area, winding through fancier and fancier neighborhoods until he finally arrived in front of a massive, lavishly decorated mansion. He double-checked the address. Weird, he thought. Tom never struck me as the ritzy type. But he was excited enough that he didn't dwell on it. He rang the doorbell, and as soon as the grand door opened, he stepped inside, ready to launch into his usual party small talk. But before he could get a word out, the door slammed shut behind him with the sound like an ominous Christmas carol gone wrong. The room was dead silent, except for the sound of faint music, piano music, tinkling in a minor key. As he looked around, his heart sank. Standing in the grand entryway were at least 50 people, all in elegant evening wear, tuxedos, evening gowns, sparkling jewelry, and enough high-end cologne to send his sinuses into overdrive. Not one of them wore a sweater, let alone an ugly one. A short man in a butler's uniform approached him with a silver tray of champagne flutes, eyeing Roy as if he were some sort of peculiar Christmas ornament that had crashed through the front window. "Sir," the butler said in a tone that could freeze boiling water, "may I assist you?" No, thank you," Roy stammered. He glanced around, desperately hoping for a hint that he was in the right place. Maybe someone else sported a hideous sweater with a grinning reindeer. But, alas, there was only the silent judgment of a room full of well-to-do strangers, looking at him like he was a holiday decoration nobody wanted. Roy cleared his throat and tried to stay calm. Actually, I was invited to party ugly sweater thing? The butler raised an eyebrow as though he had just spotted a peculiarly stubborn smudge on a prized silver tea set. "I think, sir," he said icily, "that you are mistaken. This is the annual winter gala of the Seattle Society for Classical Music Appreciation. It's by invitation only." Roy Roy felt his face flush. He was in the wrong house, on the wrong street, at the wrong kind of party altogether. Oh dear, Roy mumbled. This isn't Tom's party, is it? A tall, aristocratic woman in a fur stole, who had been standing nearby sipping champagne, looked him over with something between pity and horror. I should think not, she drawled. Roy's mind raced. He considered slipping out quietly as he could, but at the moment a small child, no older than 6, with large, curious eyes and an elaborate silk bow in her hair, approached him, tugging on his sleeve. Mister, she whispered with a gleam of fascination, are you Santa's helper? Roy blinked at a loss. No, he replied, trying to think what to say to get out of this scenario gracefully. Sorry. The child wasn't so easily deterred. She continued to tug on his sleeve, peering up at him with hopeful eyes. But you have a Christmas cat on your shirt. My daddy says only Santa's helpers would wear that. At the moment, the music stopped, and all eyes were turned toward him. The woman in the fur, obviously the child's mother, leaned down to her daughter and whispered, Darling, don't talk to the help. The butler cleared his throat, giving Roy a look of that communicated precisely one thing. Leave immediately. Right, Roy said, forcing a nervous chuckle. I'll just be going now. But as he turned to make his escape, he was stopped by an elderly man with a white beard and glasses. The man looked delighted and slapped Roy on the back with surprising force. Wonderful to meet you, young man, he boomed. Such holiday spirit in your sweater. Ha! Braver than most, that's for sure. Roy managed a shaky smile, unsure if the man was being sincere or mocking him. Either way, he took it as a cue to head for the door. But before he could take more than a few steps, someone else yelled from across the room. Oh my, ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have found our entertainment for the evening.
Ouch.
A figure with a sparkling gown stepped forward. He looks perfect. A little too much touch of whimsy for our traditional gala. Before he knew it, Roy was pushed toward a stage-like area where the microphone stood. Panicking, he glanced around and tried to protest. Oh no, I'm here by mistake. But nobody was listening, and someone shoved the microphone into his hand. Go on, said the woman in the sparkling gown. Sing us something festive. Sing? Roy sputtered. His mind was spinning. He hadn't sung since an ill-advised attempt at karaoke years ago, and the memory still made him cringe. Everyone stared, expecting, their faces lit by the gleam of anticipation. He figured there was only one way out of this, and he took a deep breath. Maybe jingle bells? He managed weakly. The crowd politely applauded. A few people cheering on the ridiculous spectacle. Roy closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and belted out, jingle bells, jingle all the way. The sound echoed through the room, filling the space with, well, something. Not necessarily music, but certainly noise. People were laughing. A few were clapping along, whether from genuine amusement or pity, he wasn't sure. By the time he reached the second verse, a few people had gathered around, joining in to shout, "Hey!" at the end of each line. Roy, despite himself, began to get into it. He didn't know whether it was out of desperation or the surreal nature of the evening, But suddenly he found himself dancing a little as he sang. But just as he was finishing his grand performance, Roy noticed two large, very official-looking security guards approaching him. One had a clipboard, the other had a scowl. Roy gave them a nervous wave. "Guess I really should be going, huh?" "Oh, I think so," said one of the guards in a tone that implied he had just had about enough of holiday cheer. They escorted him to the door. The whole room watched in stunned silence as he was all but pushed out into the cold. As he stood on the grand snow-dusted porch, adjusting his scarf, he heard the door click firmly shut behind him. He sighed, took out his phone, punched in Tom's address with renewed determination. His phone screen lit up, and with a wave of dread, Roy noticed a single notification at the top. No network connection. Groaning, he attempted to manually reset the directions to Tom's address. He'd have to navigate the old-fashioned way, turning left, then right, in the hope that somewhere he'd find a place that didn't consider a neon cat sweater stranger a public enemy number one. 20 minutes of trudging through posh neighborhoods later, he finally arrived at Tom's house. He could see the silhouettes of people gathered inside, laughing and holding cups of what was surely eggnog. And more importantly, he spotted someone through the window wearing an ugly sweater with a reindeer sticking out its tongue. Relieved, Roy knocked on the door. Tom himself opened it, eyes lighting up when he saw him. "Roy, man, we were starting to think you got lost or something," Tom said with a laugh, pulling him into the warm house. "Something like that," Roy muttered, then took a moment to soak in the cozy, familiar vibe. Christmas music, tacky sweaters, people chatting easily. As Roy wandered further into the room, he suddenly locked eyes with a woman in a hilariously awful sweater adorned with glittery Christmas trees. She gave him a curious smile, her eyes crinkled with amusement. "Nice sweater," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Yours too," Roy replied, grinning back. He took a deep breath. Maybe tonight wouldn't be so bad after all. But just as he was about to introduce himself, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see a security guard, the same one from the gala, glowering at him through the window. Wrong party, huh? That was Elena Smith's story. You can text her and let her know if you liked it. And she really wishes she could have been here tonight. Either you or your sister, I don't. Whichever one is the guy twin.
Well, there's the green one on the table there.
Okay, so when she's done, it's your turn.
Okay. Hello. I didn't do an ugly Christmas sweater, so I'll just do some from our book. It all started on a windy afternoon in March. I was hanging around outside of a vintage thrift store. Seriously, I was hanging on the corner of a store building as a spring decoration. See you, Penny? Then I saw them through the window looking up at me, smiling, giggling, and pointing. I heard words like his hands, his legs, Hopper and Nello. I had no idea what a Hopper and Nello was or why they were looking at me. There were two of them, and they looked the same. Later I found out they're called identical twins. They came outside the store
with the store lady, and they all looked up at me. That's when we got him. He's a really big rabbit. Some of you have seen the real stuffed animals. The lady said, "How about $5?" They jumped up and down and yelled yes. The next thing I knew, I was taken off the building and walked inside where the girls paid. Then I was walked to the big van and waved goodbye. I was confused on what was happening. I soon found out what a hopper and a mellow were. Hopper is a big stuffed scarecrow, and Hopper is a big white rabbit, like Minnie.
Nello's the scarecrow.
Yeah, Nello the scarecrow, Hopper the rabbit. Okay, skip. The first thing that happened after I got a tour of my new home was a trip to the basement to a thing called a washing machine. Their mom came down and turned on the machine, and a whole lot of water started pouring in. I was getting a little nervous. After that, she poured some kind of liquid in the machine that made it all bubbly. Then the girls gave me a hug and a kiss while telling me it was going to be all right. They told me I needed to go through this so I could be all clean and fresh for a new start. They had a hard time getting me down in the machine. I was so big, I filled the whole thing up. They had to keep pushing me down as the soapy water filled up all around me. I did not like getting all wet and squished, but I kept telling myself that I would be okay and it was good for me. And we really have a picture of him in the washing machine. All of a sudden, I started to move back and forth and getting really wet. I was not feeling confident at all. Then the water started draining and I felt relieved. I thought it was all over. I was wrong. All of a sudden, I started spinning really fast and I thought I would come apart. I was really scared now. It felt like I would spin forever, but it did finally stop. I was scared what would happen next, but I was surprised. The lid opened, and there were the two girls squealing with delight at how cute I was. They picked me up out of the machine, kissed me all over, and said, "Look how clean you are." I thought it was over, but I was wrong. The next thing I knew, they were putting me in another machine called the dryer. I hoped it would be better than the washer. It wasn't. I started to tumble around, and it got really hot. The worst part was my pink nose and black eyes, which the twins call sticky outy eyes, kept clacking the metal all around me. It did not feel good. At long last, it was all over. The door opened, and the girls were there to pull me out. They squeezed me super hard and told me I was all done getting clean and dry. They took me upstairs and showed me my bed. As they hugged and kissed me, tucking me in, they said, "Welcome to our family, you are home." As I lay there, I felt something inside I'd never felt before. I found out it was the feeling of love. As I fell asleep, I thought to myself, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I was mistaken. My next adventure would turn out to be even better. At least mine will be Christmassy. Okay, a Christmas blessing. It was the year my twin and I were 10 years old, and this is a true story. The closer it got to Christmas, the more we noticed our mom and stepdad, which we called Pop, whispering a lot, and we grew excited. We thought they were discussing our presents, and it was really exciting. We passed the time bouncing ideas off each other as to what presents they might be talking about. But soon our excitement turned to apprehension a couple of days later. when our mom started getting really impatient with us over minor things. She would get especially cranky when we talked about what presents we wanted. A few days later, our apprehension turned into full-blown worry when we found our mom in the kitchen crying in the arms of Pop. When we asked what was wrong, she would just yell at us, "Go to your room." We ran to our room and slammed the door, crying in anger and fear, not understanding what was happening. Later that night, our mom called us into the living room to apologize and have an important talk. We did not like the sound of that. What she told us was worse than we could ever imagine. She told us that we were getting evicted and didn't know where we would go, that we might even be homeless. The worst part to 10-year-olds was to hear that there wouldn't be any presents or Christmas at all. Our mom just kept crying when we asked if Santa would be able to find us if we were homeless. The next few days were pretty quiet and miserable. We didn't complain or ask any more questions, not wanting to set our mom off crying or yelling at us again. A week later, as we sullenly started packing, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to several people holding boxes and smiling at us. Our mom and Pop came to the door to see what was happening. The visitors told us they were from the local church and had a Christmas blessing for us. They brought in boxes full of toys, food, clothing, and a decorated tree. A man went over to Pop and handed him a piece of paper. When Pop started to cry, we got fearful, but Mom went over to look at the paper and started crying happy tears this time. We stood there dumbfounded, as 10-year-olds would, not understanding what was happening. Our mom, Pop, and the man all laughed at our faces and told us that our rent had been paid for 6 months. We didn't have to move. We were so excited that we squealed and jumped up and down. We all hugged each other, completely overjoyed. When we all thanked them, the man who handed the rent check to Pop said, "Oh no, don't thank us, thank God." And that's just what we did.
What? We got one more. I want it. I've seen this rabbit, and it's just about the same size in this picture as it is now, in comparison to these guys.
Yeah, I didn't have
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, I have a question. Is it G left or G right when you're...
ha ha ha.
G right.
So G right, ha left? You're the musher man, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's
I don't know,
There's a G in right.
It's pronounced Gee.
Gee.
Gee,
Okay. All right. Well, with that odd introduction, we have our next story, The Musher Man.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kevin Hospure. And for those who don't know me, I'll apologize in advance for exposing you to my sense of humor. Ugly's Christmas sweater party. Got the wrong address. My doorbell rang, and never expected to receive an invitation to an ugly Christmas sweater party. The invite seemed so out of character for my old coworker. To my knowledge, he never had parties. He never went to parties. He didn't like parties. Of all the types of parties he might throw, an ugly holiday sweater party failed to hit the list. The strangest part of my confusion came from the person who handed me the envelope. Apparently, my former coworker had his roommate write out the invites and deliver them. The odd fellow wore a pair of short-legged, blue jean coveralls and sandals. The outfit accentuated his knocked knees. His long-sleeved turtleneck had wide red and white horizontal stripes and screamed, "Where's Waldo?" The addition of black Harry Potter glasses and brown hair steered the image in my head. Your missing Waldo stocking cap came to mind, but I didn't voice it. Waldo man turned and walked off before I opened the envelope. His rapid departure left me with the feeling I had just been served a subpoena. Full of questions and no one to answer them, I closed my door and returned to my living room recliner. I opened the envelope and read the handwritten note. You are invited to an ugly Christmas sweater party. 23 December, 8 p.m., 12387 West Michigan. Ugly holiday sweater required. Alrighty then. I only had one ugly Christmas sweater. My neighbor had a party years ago, and I took an old, worn sweatshirt and turned it inside out. For the picture on front, I used a sample Scotch bottle. You know, the kind you get on an airplane. Anyway, I dipped it into green paint and made 15 imprints on the sweatshirt in the shape of a tree. Doing the same with beer bottle tops, I placed red ball shapes for decorations. The coup de grace of this ugly artistic failure was the tree topper. Rather than a star, I painted a blue quarter moon. All in all, it rocked and reeked at the same time. My imaginative failure continued. On the back, I added a half-baked, childish drawing of Rudolph squatting in the woods. A sign beside him said, "Reindeer wanted, position open." I'll leave it to your imagination on what Rudy was leaving by the signpost. So, I spent 2 hours searching through storage boxes until I found the horrible holiday clothing article. Time in the storage box managed to add to Rudy's afterglow, which included a musty aroma. Wonderful. It's party day. In this unusually warm winter weather, I didn't need a jacket over my sweatshirt. After donning the freshly washed expressionistic art, I opened my phone and entered my Uber app. 15 minutes later, I was on my way to West Mission. You sure you want to go there? The driver asked. It's an ugly Christmas sweater party. An old friend of mine invited me. This is the address. Your funeral, he said. Sketchy part of town. He looked at me in the rearview mirror. At least you're dressed for it. I ignored him. Exiting the car, I gave the Uber driver a nice holiday tip on the app and 5 stars. I watched him speed off. How rude. I turned and looked at the building. The siding had a faded 12387 above some colorful graffiti. The artist, using the term loosely, had a serious disdain for authority and an apparent fixation on weapons of all types. Over my shoulder, I verified the street corner showed West Mission. Must be the place. I looked up. This looks like an old theater. I think my parents brought me here as a child. It was old then. I entered. 2 steps in, my foot stuck to the lobby floor, almost tripping me. I noticed a pair of shoes on the concession stand counter fitted on the ends of crossed legs. They moved in time to some unheard music. The soles showed significant wear and streaks of 2 different colors of chewing gum. I walked up and rapped my knuckle on the counter. A young man pulled his feet back, removed headphones, stood up, grabbed a paper napkin from a dented dispenser, blew his nose. After squishing the soiled item, he three-pointed the napkin into a trash bin. The 3 points came not from a long-distance all-net goal, but from the wad striking a torn Metallica poster, ricocheting off the handle of a broom that needed to be used in the worst way, and into a pile of several other biohazard wads. "Can I help ya?" he said. Trying not to focus on his acne, I took a breath. Then I coughed after breathing in the stale air surrounding the greasy creature. "Yes," I said, exhaling with another cough. "I'm here for the ugly sweater party." Ugly sweater party. His eyes dropped to my sweatshirt. "You ain't gonna win," he said, shaking his head. "Chunks of popcorn or potato chips or something, I don't know. I don't want to know," fell out of his hair. I turned around. You maybe got a chance. Facing him again, I tried to hold my breath. "Is the party through there?" I pointed at a dingy, smoke-stained curtain closed over an opening to the theater. Maybe it was a theater, or used to be a theater. I hope it's a theater. He shook his head. "Only if you'd be interested in another kind of party." He smiled. One stained tooth stood out, perhaps because I couldn't see any others. "But y'all Christmas tree might make you popular." "Excuse me?" "Just teasing. Y'all be the third dude to come in here tonight looking for a pot. That ain't never gonna happen here." He hacked and blew his nose again. I watched a crumpled napkin sail through the air. This one landed in the bin. "About time," he said. "I only knowed this 'cause I heard the other two guys talking on their phones and complaining. They said the ugly party's on East Mission. Y'all be 20 miles in the wrong direction." Crap, I thought to myself, but didn't voice it. My mind began swirling around a grain. "Hey," Acne Boy said, pulling me out of my spin. I looked up, pulled something out from under the counter. He blew on it. Dust and spittle flew, maybe a few cobwebs. He wiped it on his sleeve. "You want to buy a baby root bar?" he said. "No, thank you. I'll be leaving now." I turned across the lobby, avoiding the sticky substance I stepped in before. Back on the street, I pulled out my phone. One bar. Great. Can tonight get any better? I opened my Uber app, hoping my driver was still close. Nothing showed. I dialed in the correct party address, and the app showed my current location. Minutes passed. More minutes passed. Apparently, an Uber driver might be willing to pick someone up elsewhere and drop them off on West Mission, but is less willing to answer a call for a ride and pick someone up down here. Crap. This time I voiced my displeasure very out loud. "I wonder if I can get a taxi down here," I said to a spray-painted drawing of an AR-15 rifle. It didn't answer. Not a true story.
Not a true story.
You're not on the list.
Well, it's written in invisible spiritual ink.
Oh, okay. So, Bob, you had something also, and you're not on the list either. You just make sure you put your name on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody checked in twice.
Excuse me. Okay, this is it's a little bit different, but it is a Christmas story. It's called A Prayer Rescue Team. Christmas angel Steve had been ordered to meet Archangel Michael at the Rainbow Bridge at 10 a.m. heaven time and not be late. With 10 minutes left before the appointed time, Steve approached the viewing area of the Rainbow Bridge.
he saw Archangel Michael watching the reunions between pets and their livestock owners. "What's up, boss?" Steve greeted the Archangel Michael, his super boss, the angel who supervised all angels and nearly everything else that happened in the heavenly world. "Shush, quiet. See that black and brown shepherd over there?" Michael pointed to a dog that appeared to be sleeping. "See that older man who is just approaching the bridge? Now watch," the angel ordered. The dog's head came up. He rose to his feet, stared at the bridge. The old man started up the far side of the bridge. When the man reached the center of the high point, the dog took off like a bullet. The two came together at the crown of the bridge, the dog nearly knocking the man over the bridge's rail. The man and dog tumbled down the near side of the bridge and rolled together on the ground. Steve could hear the man's laugh turn into a boy's. Unrestrained joy. The dog's excited whining and yipping joined with the boy's laughter as the boy and dog rolled together on the green grass of Heaven's Rainbow Bridge Park. It excites me every time I watch a reunion, Archangel Michael said. The dog has been waiting nearly 60 years for his boyhood companion. See that little black dog? Michael pointed to a girl approaching the bridge. Steve watched it happen again. The little dog and a girl who had once been an old woman and missed her companion dog when the small animal passed were now reunited. "Gee, boss, is that what we're doing today? Watching reunions?" "No, I thought watching one or two would be enough for you to get the idea. Each dog needs a boy or girl to love. See that black and white Aussie shepherd over there?" When Steve nodded, Michael continued. "Not every dog has a boy or girl to grow up with and love. The Aussie had never had a boy or a girl. It was killed defending a flock of sheep from a pack of dingo dogs. Her owner trained her, fed her, but never loved her. She was a working dog all her short life. And now it's time for her to receive her reward for being heroic service and sacrifice. She will be going with you on your next assignment." "What am I supposed to do with a dog?" Steve was confused. "Your next month's assignment is with the Seattle Prayer Rescue. The dog is to help you with some of your assignment's questions." Michael was getting tired. Steve could always tell the big angel got all snippy. Just like the dog with you, things will work out as they should. The dog's name is Annie. Michael turned away and disappeared. Steve watched as Annie slowly rose to her feet, turned toward where Steve stood, and slowly approached to sit expectantly, looking up at Steve. Steve noticed the green Western-style handkerchief collar around the dog's neck with the name in black ink on the edge, Annie. Steve patted the dog on the head, rubbed her ears. "Well, Annie, I should be able to remember your name, Annie. Welcome to the Prayer Rescue. Looks like we'll be learning the job together." One of the gifts Michael had given Steve after his success last Christmas was the ability to transfer himself from one place to another. Taking Annie by the collar, he transferred himself and Annie to Seattle's Transparent Vehicle Park, TVP. Steve liked Seattle and had been there many times. Walking to the door to the TVP, Steve and Annie approached the counter where a throne angel with a glowing aura sat on a high stool. "Hi, throne." "Steve, I'm Steve, and this is Annie. We are here to check out the Prayer Rescue Unit. It's not ready yet." The throne smiled as energy leaked from around his eyes. Come back tomorrow morning. We open at 5 local time. The throne turned to his work, leaving Steve and Annie to leave. Come on, Annie, Steve and his new 4-footed friend. The two left the transparent office, and Steve teleported them to a free hostel run by a friendly, temporary retired Easter angel. Steve took the old box spring bed. Annie jumped on the bed and lay next to him. Morning found them again at the TVP office, talking to another throne. The throne handed Steve the starter operator card for the classic yellow cab made by Hudson Motors a long time ago. A unique characteristic of the taxi was its appearance and function to meet any situation. The communication system monitored a pararescue channel and would alert Steve and Annie to people in need. With Annie in the passenger seat, Steve drove toward Northgate. To mortalize, the cab appeared to be like any other taxi. The taxi had a communication system that monitored all prayers for help through the Seattle metro area from Marysville to Tacoma. Steve tested his ability to transport the taxi, and it worked without a hitch. He could expect to arrive at his desired destination in the correct appearance for the location and situation. Each time Steve transported, Annie groaned and looked at him with sad, sorrowful eyes. Steve reached over, patted Annie, and rubbed her ears when he was interrupted by a prayer immediate. Both Steve and Annie's eyes brightened. They had a mission. A man and his 11-year-old son, Thomas, had been Christmas tree hunting on a mountain road. When they became lost, it ran out of fuel for the family van. They were in danger of dying from exposure. Snow and freezing rain was beginning to fall all over the mountain. Steve looked at the location scope, noted the position of the van, and transported to a side road a mile higher up the mountain from the stranded Christmas tree hunters. Mr. Hale Johnson had given up. He was hopelessly lost on a mountain road. It was below freezing in a hollow, and his all-wheel drive van was out of fuel. His cell phone battery was depleted. He had no way of getting off the mountain or calling for help. Harold bowed his head and prayed to his guardian angel for help. Inside the van, it was already below freezing. The father and son had eaten the last of their lunch and consumed the last of the warm cocoa from the thermos bottle. Harold put his hand on his son's shoulder, and together, the man and boy prayed. The faint sound of a truck in low gear came to the stranded pair. Harold looked out the windshield hopefully. He saw headlights coming down the road, and a red, rusted flatbed truck came bouncing up to where the man and boy stared from the windshield. Angel Steve stopped the truck, opened the passenger door, and Annie jumped out and bounded through the snow to the stranded van. The boy saw the dog and opened the door and was surprised when the black and white dog jumped up onto the seat and climbed into the boy's lap and began to lick and warm his face with his breath. Harold just stared at the old man, as the old man climbed down from the truck and walked up to the driver's door. Harold rolled down the window just as the old man smiled and said, "You look a bit lost up here on the mountain. Could you use a hand?" the old man asked. Harold explained he was lost and out of fuel, and could the old man help them? Angel Steve laughed, snorted, as old men do. "I see here the vehicle's a diesel. Just happen to have some good old diesel number 2 in my tank here." Steve pointed with his thumb at a large 250-gallon tank next to the truck's cab. Of course, the diesel is red, but that won't hurt nothing. Open up the gas tank and I'll fill her up so that you and the boy can get home. See, she already got your tree right pretty one too. Angel Steve filled Van's fuel tank to full, returned the hose to the hook on the tank. Now, that should get you enough to get home. Just go down the road the ways you're facing, about 3 miles. There's a crossroad, take a right and go 6 or 7 miles and you get to the highway. A left at the highway will take you towards Seattle. Steve looked at Annie, who was warming the boy with her own body heat. Come on, Annie, it's time for us to be getting home ourselves. You have a good day and a Merry Christmas, Mr. Johnson, and you too, Thomas. Annie jumped through the now open window, ran around the truck, jumped through the truck's open window, and Steve climbed into the truck, started out. He waited until he was sure the van was running, then waved and drove down the mountain road, disappeared around a sharp curve. Harold Johnson started to follow the truck, but stopped the van as the truck disappeared around the curve. Thomas, did the man tell you your name? No, Dad, I was so cold. And Annie was warm and needed petting. I didn't say anything. Think they could have been guardian angels? Yes, I'm sure they have been. When the emergency prayer came in, the old flatbed truck turned into a new Lincoln limousine. It pulled up to an alley where a group of men were huddled around a barrel, burning old wood from a construction site across the street. Steve, dressed in a chauffeur's uniform, opened the trunk, removed 3 boxes of warm clothing and 2 boxes of food, and set them next to the car. Crossing the street to the men huddled around the fire, my boss thought you could use a little Christmas cheer. Sorry, no eggnog, but the coffee's still hot. There's a couple of tents and sleeping bags in the boxes. Steve pointed with him at the 4th and 5th buckets he had pulled from the large trunk. Say, could a couple of you fellows help me with this? Steve pointed at a large 2-handed roasting pan. Sorry, not much, but might take some of the room in the bellies. Might fill some of the room in the bellies. My boss said to wish you a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. Paper plates and eating tools are in a bag here. Steve says he handed a plastic bag to one of the open-mouthed men. It was then Steve saw 3 women remaining close to the fire barrel. I see there are ladies here, but my boss did send a couple of bags for them, for ladies. Steve returned to the car, reached behind the passenger seat and removed 3 sleep shopping bags. Steve walked to where the women stood, handed the bags to them. Merry Christmas, he said, and returned to the car. One of the men had started to approach the car, but stopped when he spotted Annie, who now looked like a large German Shepherd police dog. Steve saw the action, but no threat, no foul. One man, who appeared to be a leader of sorts, approached Steve. Mister, thank your mistress for all that she said to a group of strangers. You have made Christmas mean something to us again. Thank you. A tear appeared and was quickly wiped away. Hey, almost forgot. Steve handed the man an envelope. This envelope is in it for 12. Something is in it for 12. I noticed there are 11 of you. The leader grinned and said, one of the ladies has a child sleeping in that refrigerator box over there. You might say there are 12 of us. My mistress and I have trusted you to do what the note in the letter asked. Steve looked at the man's eyes and knew he would do as the note asked. I don't need the rest of it. Yeah,
time for, depending on what clock I look at, we have time for one more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this one I wrote originally some years ago. And out in Eastern Washington, I'm known as Superman. And it's kind of in that mentality that I wrote this piece of poetry. Now, there's two plays on words here. There's two kinds of sleigh, and there's two kinds of reindeer. And it's in the cross stick here that says Santa and the Eastern Washington University Lady Eagles, referring to their women's basketball team. Okay. So it would appear to be, and follow this reasoning and see, Nicholas the Saint surely is with our Lady Hoop team. To this, let's investigate what so would seem. As Santa is garbed in colors of red and white, adorned likewise are the Eastern Eagles, right? Nice and trimmed with fur about his coat and hat. Does not our arena have trim of bear, etc., and cat, the mascots of the other teams? To kids, Santa brings cheer and inspiration. Here, too, the Eagles have a similar occupation. Ever so, St. Nick has a guided sleigh. Eastern Eagles likewise have a guided sleigh, S-L-A-Y. As this domain is the northernmost of the Big Sky, so Eastern is of the Northern Big Sky Conference. That Santa is so lively and quick, Eagles are so like St. Nick. Reindeer teams to Eagles have been compared regal. Noted that his team is more rapid than Eagle. When meeting an obstacle, both mount to the sky. As up on wings of eagles, do both not fly. Santa has his team of guided reindeers. Has too, Eastern, a team of guided reindeers. It is flying to the top of the roof for St. Nick. Now to the top of the hoop is the goal for our eagle clique. Getting straight to our work, turn we both with a dexterous jerk. Oh, with a twinkle in our eyes, now to inspire aptitude in our guides. Until now, ties have been general to all teams, narrowing now to basketball streams. And that Santa's domain is of a wintry nature, very much so the basketball season is for sure. Each have their clatter on the inside court. Reindeer and Santas are on the outside sort. Santa pops down the chimney with a bound. Into a game, Eagles pop into the game sound. Then Santa stuffs the fireplace stockings. Yes, the Eagles stuff the hoop net stockings. Let's see. Santa has a clutter of nearly 40 feet atop the roof where you hear their beat. Ditto on the court of wreaths underneath, you have the Lady Eagles too, such a bequeath. Eagles have a rally cry for the team, as so does little old St. Nick, it would seem. Girls and boys, I trust that you will see your way. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard my say, Eastern Eagles and Santa are kindred spirits throughout. So be, how can anyone have any doubt? I won't do this one, but it's called Christmas Switches.
This isn't entitled The Economy of Christmas, is it?
Well, I do have one called The Economist Christian. Funny that you might ask, but I'm not going to read. I'm not going to read that one. So, remember how this book works. It's about using memoir and story to teach the basic principles of economics. And one of the topics in economics is something called antitrust, and that's the public policy for breaking up monopolies and collusion, to set prices and things like that. So I'm just going to read a short portion of this one called Bigness, Fairness, and the Political Economy of Antitrust. My dad drove an oil truck. He worked for the local Union Oil distributor in Wenatchee, Washington for 33 years until he retired in the early 1980s. He was far down the organization chart for Union Oil. He was in the oil business nonetheless. Once in the middle of the 1960s, shortly after I got my driver's license, we had a gasoline price war in Wenatchee. If I were willing to break with the family loyalty to Union Oil and buy an off-brand cut-rate gas, I could fill up my 51 Chevy for under $5. I thought this was about as good as it could get. My dad, the oil man, had a different idea. One time at the dinner table, I remember him saying, "What we need to do is to clean up the oil industry, get rid of all the Jippo cut-rate guys." Mom and I knew that this was a good time to change the dinner discussion to sports. Dad had a seller's view of market structure. Too many sellers made business difficult. Not only were prices lower, but you had little control over the price at all. If you could get rid of the cut-rate riffraff, you and the Texaco man might be able to come to a sensible agreement to stop, quote, hitting each other over the head, unquote, on prices. Dad had good company in this view. In 1776, Adam Smith wrote in The Wealth of Nations, "People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices." Unless you're Tony Soprano or Michael Corleone, reducing the number of sellers in the market's not easy. For one thing, the government uses antitrust laws and policies against actions by businesses that reduce the number of sellers and raise prices. Federal government regulatory agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice often scrutinize mergers and collusive activities.
Wow.
Yeah, I brought some short stories, Christmas short stories I wrote. If anybody wants copies of them.
Okay.
I do that instead of sending Christmas cards.
That's a great idea.
Cool.
I would like a copy.
Okay.